The night Ava entered the east wing, she thought the muffled cries belonged to wind slipping through the cracked stone. But when she pressed her ear to the heavy door of the prince's chamber, she froze. Two figures, tall, pale, and moving with a predatory calm, were bent over the small body of the heir, their hands sealing his mouth and chest as if draining the very air from him. The boy's eyes bulged with silent terror. Ava had seen cruelty among nobles before, but never this. Never vampires suffocating a child who hadn't even learned to shift into mist. Her throat went dry. Her first instinct was to drop the linens and run, pretend she had seen nothing. But the prince, Elias, only 11, shy as a moonflower, had once handed her a piece of sugared bread after she accidentally spilled water on herself. "You look sad," he had said. "Sweet things help." That memory exploded in her chest now. Without thinking, she burst into the room. The vampires' heads snapped toward her, their eyes glimmering like polished silver. "Stop!" she shouted, though her voice cracked. She grabbed Elias's wrist and pulled, feeling his trembling bones under her palm. The two figures hissed in unison. One stepped forward, his outline blurring as if preparing to shift. Ava didn't wait. She yanked the prince toward the door, dragging him across the carpet, her legs burning. She didn't know how she found the strength. She didn't know why they didn't leap immediately to stop her. All she knew was the frantic rhythm of Elias's shallow breaths and the thunder in her ears as she fled down the corridor. Every lantern flickered as they passed, shadows stretching like claws along the walls. But before we continue, I want to invite you to something very special. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. And comment below which city you're watching from. Now let's continue. Ava rounded the corner, nearly colliding with the marble pillar at the intersection of the royal hall. She dropped to her knees, holding Elias against her chest, feeling the flutter of his breath. "You're all right," she whispered, though she wasn't sure it was true. His small fingers clutched her apron, nails digging in. She wiped the sweat and fear from his forehead, her own heart hammering so loudly she barely heard the approaching footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing with a cold authority that made her skin prickle. When she looked up, she saw the tall silhouette first, a dark cloak sweeping behind him, boots carved from obsidian leather, posture sharp enough to cut glass. Then she saw his eyes, glimmering with a predatory red glow that dimmed the lanterns around him. The king, Lucian, the one whose temper was known in every village, whose justice was swift, whose mercy was reserved only for those who proved loyalty beyond doubt. And she, a maid, a nobody, was kneeling with his gasping son in her arms. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The corridors fell silent, as if even the castle itself was holding its breath. Lucian's gaze dropped to Elias, then lifted to Ava again. His eyes narrowed, not in anger but in confusion, as if he were struggling to piece together something he should already know. "Why?" he said in a low, dangerous whisper. "Is my son choking in your arms?" Ava swallowed hard. Her voice was weak but steady. "Two vampires were hurting him, Your Majesty, suffocating him. I pulled him away." She waited for disbelief, for rage, for the guards to descend upon her. But none of that came. Instead, Lucian stepped closer, lowering himself until he was eye level with his son. He brushed a thumb across Elias's cheek, and the boy flinched. That was when the king's expression changed. A shadow flickered in his eyes. Not anger at Ava, but something deeper, older, and far more dangerous. He stood abruptly. "Where?" he asked, voice trembling at the edges. "Did you see them?" Ava pointed toward the east wing, her hand shaking. Lucian didn't speak again. He simply turned and vanished into mist, a red streak darting through the corridor with a silent fury that made the torches gutter. Ava held Elias tighter as the cold wind left behind by the king swept over her. She didn't understand what she had just witnessed or why the king had reacted that way. But one thing was clear. She had stepped into something far larger and far deadlier than an act of courage. She had stepped into a secret the royal family had been burying for years. Ava didn't dare move for several seconds after the king vanished. The air where he had stood still buzzed with cold energy, the kind that seeped into the bones and lingered. Elias clung to her, his breath ragged but no longer failing. She smoothed his hair, whispering light reassurances she wasn't sure he believed. Truthfully, she didn't believe them either. Whatever she had seen, whatever Lucian had seen in his son's reaction, it had shaken the king to the core. She rose carefully, lifting Elias with both arms. He wasn't heavy, but his cold skin made her grip him tighter. She hurried toward the safer wing of the palace, passing tall stained-glass windows depicting ancient battles between humans and vampires. Battles Lucian's ancestors had claimed to end when they united the bloodlines under one kingdom. But Ava had heard other stories too, whispered in the servants' quarters late at night. Stories of factions inside the castle. Stories of old magic resurfacing. Stories of shadows that fed not on blood, but on breath. She shook the thought away as she reached the infirmary. The healer, an elderly vampire named Rowan, looked up with startled golden eyes the moment she entered. "What happened to him?" he asked, rising so quickly his stool clattered backward. Ava hesitated. He couldn't breathe. Someone was hurting him. Rowan's gaze sharpened. He took Elias from her arms, laying him gently on the padded table. His fingers hovered over the boy's chest, glowing faintly with healing energy. Elias winced, but didn't resist. Rowan frowned at the reaction, then glanced at Ava again. "Was the king with him?" "No," she said. "He arrived after I found them." "Found who?" She swallowed. "2 vampires. I don't know their faces. They were suffocating him." Rowan froze. The glow around his hands flickered, then steadied again. He didn't speak, but something dark passed across his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. He finished the treatment in silence, and when Elias's breathing steadied into something calm and even, Rowan stepped back. "He'll recover," he said quietly. "But what you saw, you must tell no one else." "I already told the king." Rowan exhaled sharply. "Then the castle will not be quiet tonight." As if on cue, the doors burst open. 2 guards swept inside, but Ava recognized neither. Their uniforms were royal, but their faces were unfamiliar. Pale, stern, eyes too flat. One pointed at Ava. "You, come with us." Rowan moved in front of her immediately. "She stays here. The prince is still recovering." The guard stepped closer, unbothered by the healer's authority. "The king has summoned her. Now." That changed everything. Rowan did not argue again. Ava glanced at Elias one last time. His small hand reached toward her, as if sensing her fear. "I'll be back," she whispered, squeezing his fingers. "I promise." She followed the guards down a long corridor lit only by flickering blue flames. The deeper they went, the colder the air became until Ava could see her breath cloud in front of her. The castle had many rooms she had never been allowed to enter, but she knew where they were taking her the moment she recognized the heavy obsidian doors. The king's private council chamber. One guard pushed the door open. The room inside was massive and circular, lit entirely by candles arranged in spirals across the stone floor. And in the center of the spirals, standing perfectly still, was King Lucian. His eyes snapped toward Ava the moment she entered. Not red, not furious, just shaken. "Leave us," he ordered. The guards obeyed instantly, sealing the door behind them. For a long moment, Lucian said nothing. He simply stared at Ava as though seeing her for the first time. She lowered her gaze, unsure if she should bow or speak. But then he took one slow step toward her. "You saved my son," he said, "and you saw something you were never meant to see." Ava's heart hammered. "I didn't mean to intrude. You did what no one else in this castle has done in years." His voice lowered. "You acted with courage, and you acted without hesitation." She couldn't tell if that was praise or accusation. Lucienne stepped closer still, until he stood just a breath away. She felt the chill of his aura, colder than the corridor outside. "What you witnessed," he said quietly, "was an attack by a faction that should have been extinct. A faction that has been hiding in my castle, under my rule, feeding on breath instead of blood." Ava swallowed hard. "Why would they hurt the prince?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "Because they want him gone. And because they know I would burn this entire kingdom to ash if they touched him." His hand curled at his side, trembling. "Ava," he said, meeting her eyes, "from this moment forward, you are no longer just a maid. You are a witness, and that makes you very valuable. and very unsafe. A chill crept down her spine. "What happens to me now?" she whispered. Lucian's answer was simple. "You stay with me." Ava had imagined many things the king might say, but not that. The words hung in the cold air between them, almost unreal. Stay with him? She was a maid, with no power, no influence, no right to stand in the inner circle of the royal family. Yet Lucian's gaze held no hint of uncertainty. It was as though he had already made the decision long before he spoke it aloud. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why me?" "Because you saw what others refused to see," he replied. "And because you acted. The assassins expected fear. They expected silence. You chose neither." He began to pace slowly, the long edge of his cloak brushing the candlelit floor. "There are few in this castle I trust. Very few." His voice darkened, barely above a whisper. And tonight, that number may have decreased. Ava felt her stomach tighten. She remembered the faceless guards who had fetched her. Their expressions had been too flat, too cold, like masks. "You think they're everywhere," she murmured. Lucian stopped pacing. "I know they are." He lifted his hand, and the candles dimmed, as if responding to his mood. "They call themselves the Hallowed, a dying sect of vampires who rejected the king's peace centuries ago. They believe breath is the essence of the living world, and that draining it gives them power beyond blood." Ava shivered. The memory of Elias's terrified eyes pulsed in her mind. "And they're in your castle. They have been hiding here longer than you've been alive," he said bitterly. "Disguised, embedded, waiting." Ava clenched her hands to stop their shaking. "Why would they attack the prince?" Lucian hesitated, something rare and unsettling. "Because Elias carries a power they want, a power I have tried, desperately, to keep dormant." Before Ava could ask more, the temperature in the chamber dropped sharply. Not subtly, but instantly, as if winter itself had torn through the walls. Lucian stiffened. "Stay behind me," he ordered. Ava obeyed, though her legs trembled. The candles flickered, then bent, flames dragging sideways toward a single point, the tall window facing the northern cliffs. A shadow darkened the glass, but not from outside. It spread across the window's surface from within, like ink bleeding through paper. Lucian raised his hand, magic humming in the air, a low vibration Ava could feel in her teeth. "Show yourself," he growled. The shadow peeled away from the window and dripped to the floor, forming the shape of a hooded figure with a blurred, featureless face. The room filled with a sound like a distant, hollow breath. Lucian stepped forward, his voice ice. "You dare enter my chambers?" The figure tilted its head. Its voice came distorted, like multiple voices speaking at once. "The heir lives." Ava's heart lurched. Lucian's expression twisted with fury. "You will not touch him again. You cannot protect him forever. King of ruins." Ava didn't know the meaning of those words, but Lucienne flinched. A small, involuntary movement, but unmistakable. The figure reached out a hand, its shadowed fingers stretching unnaturally long. The torches dimmed further, the air thickening. Ava clutched her skirt, trying not to panic. Lucian turned his head slightly toward her. "Do not move!" The figure lunged. Lucian reacted with inhuman speed. Darkness surged from his chest, like wings unfolding, wrapping Ava instantly and pulling her behind him. The collision of magic and shadow exploded with a burst of cold that made her gasp. The chamber shook as the two forces clashed, Lucian's energy sharp and crimson, the intruders a suffocating black mist. For seconds, Ava saw nothing but searing flashes of red and pitch black swallowing the edges of the room. Then, suddenly, the shadow shrieked, a sound so piercing she covered her ears. Lucian thrust his hand forward, and the intruder's form split apart like torn fabric, dissolving into dust that vanished before it touched the floor. Silence crashed into the room. Ava breathed hard, her pulse racing. Lucian staggered slightly before regaining his balance. He wiped a trace of dark residue from his mouth. "They grow bolder," he muttered. "Too bold." Ava stepped forward carefully. "Are you hurt?" Lucian turned to her, and for the first time, she saw something fragile in his eyes. Exhaustion hidden beneath centuries of strength. No, he said, but the word lacked conviction. He exhaled slowly. Ava, the attack on Elias wasn't an isolated attempt. It was a message. And you are now part of what they want to destroy. Her spine chilled. What do they want? Lucian's gaze softened, almost apologetic. Everything I love. A pause hung between them, heavy and unspoken. And that includes my son, he finished. Ava found her voice. Then let me help. I won't step back now. The king held her gaze for a long moment. His expression shifted. Not approval, not relief. Something deeper. Then you stay, he said quietly. By my side. And by his. A new dread crept into her bones, because staying meant entering a war no human had ever survived. Ava barely slept that night. She was given a room closer to the royal quarters, a place she had never been allowed to step into before. But the silk sheets and carved wooden walls brought her no comfort. Every creak felt like a whisper. Every flicker of torchlight reminded her of the shadow that had invaded the king's chamber. When dawn finally arrived, pale and cold, washing through the castle windows, she rose immediately, her throat tight. She needed to see Elias. The corridors were quieter than usual. Fewer guards. More tension. It felt as if the castle itself was bracing for something unseen. As she hurried toward the infirmary, she rehearsed what she would say if the king questioned her presence, though he had not set limits. Stay with me, he had said. But what did that even mean for someone like her? When she reached the infirmary, Rowan was already awake, standing by the prince's bed. Ava hesitated at the doorway, but Rowan gestured her in. Elias sat propped up on pillows, pale but awake, his eyes drifting toward her immediately. Relief washed through her. How are you feeling? She asked softly. Elias blinked, slow and tired. Better, because you came back. The words struck her more deeply than she expected. She sat beside him, smoothing his blanket. His breathing was steady, but there was a faint tremor in his hands, the memory of being unable to breathe. Rowan watched the boy with a gaze full of unspoken concern. He should recover fully, Rowan said, though his tone wasn't reassuring. But the attack left traces in his aura. Ava frowned. Traces? Rowan hesitated. The hollowed drain breath, but they also leave a residue, a kind of darkness that lingers. It takes time to clear. Elias shifted closer to Ava, resting his fragile fingers against her arm. Don't leave, he whispered. I won't, she said instantly. Rowan raised an eyebrow. The king already told you your new position. Ava blushed. He said I should stay close, for safety. For safety, Rowan echoed, though his tone made her wonder if that was the whole truth. He walked to the shelves, rummaging through jars of herbs and powders. The king doesn't trust many people, but you've changed something. Ava stiffened. I haven't changed anything. Rowan gave her a knowing look. Kings don't protect humans unless there's a reason. Before she could question him, a loud bang echoed in the hall. Elias flinched. Ava rose quickly, heart pounding. The double doors slammed open, and 3 guards entered, but not the cold, expressionless ones from the night before. These were familiar faces, ones she had seen training in the courtyard. One stepped forward. The king summons the prince. Immediately. Rowan frowned. Elias is still recovering. It's not a request, the guard said, though his voice held no threat. He wants both of them. He looked at Ava. You too. Ava swallowed her fear. She squeezed Elias's hand. I'm with you. They followed the guards through the winding corridors until they reached the throne hall, a room she had only glimpsed once during a festival. Tall pillars framed the path, and sunlight fractured through stained glass windows, painting the marble floor in shades of red and gold. At the far end, the king stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable. Bring them forward, Lucian commanded. The guards obeyed and stepped aside. Ava guided Elias toward the center of the hall. The king descended the steps from the throne, his cloak trailing behind him like a dark tide. Elias hesitated, then moved closer to Lucienne. The king placed a hand on his son's shoulder, studying him with an intensity that bordered on painful. You should have been safe, he murmured, almost to himself. Ava lowered her head. Your Majesty, what do you need from us? Lucian lifted his gaze to her. I need the truth I cannot see. His eyes flickered with red light. "Elias, tell me what you remember." The boy trembled. I woke up with someone over me. They were whispering. I couldn't move. I couldn't." Ava placed her hand over his. "You're safe now." Lucian watched the exchange with a strange expression, a mix of gratitude and something heavier. "He will stay by your side for now," he said. "You may be the only person he trusts." Ava blinked. "Me?" Lucian stepped closer. "The hallowed are after those who can sense them. Elias is one, and now, so are you." A chill climbed her spine. "Why me?" Lucian's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because you saw them without their mask. No human should be able to do that, unless something has awakened in you." Ava felt the world tilt. "Awakened?" Lucian nodded slowly, and then he said the words that changed everything. "You may not be as human as you think." Ava stared at the king, certain she had misheard him. The throne hall felt suddenly too large, the air too thin. Not as human as she thought? Her pulse hammered in her ears, and a chill spread through her limbs as though her body were reacting before her mind could fully process the words. "That's impossible," she whispered. "My parents were simple villagers. Nothing more." Lucian studied her as if searching for cracks beneath the surface. "And yet you saw the hallowed clearly. Their true form. Humans cannot perceive them unless they possess a dormant lineage or a bond with someone who carries old magic." Ava shook her head. "I don't have magic. I don't have anything." Elias tugged on her sleeve gently. "I knew you felt different," he murmured. "You shine, even in dark rooms." The boy's sincerity would have warmed her on any other day, but now it only deepened her confusion. She forced herself to breathe. "Your Majesty, I'm just a maid." Lucian stepped closer, and the hall dimmed as if reacting to his mood. "You saved my son from an attack that should have killed you. You resisted the suffocation aura of the hallowed, and you saw through their veil. None of that is normal." "I reacted," she said softly. "Anyone would have." "No," Lucian replied. "Most would be dead." A silence settled over them until Rowan entered through the side doors, bowing his head in apology for his late arrival. He approached with urgency. "Your Majesty, forgive my interruption, but I must speak with you." Lucian gestured for him to continue. Rowan turned to Ava. "Your aura has shifted. I sensed it when you held the prince this morning." He hesitated, as though choosing words carefully. "There is something awakening in you, something old." Ava's chest tightened. "What exactly?" Rowan exchanged a glance with Lucian, then spoke with gentle caution. "You may be a descendant of the breath-blessed." Lucian stiffened. Ava blinked. "The what?" "A forgotten line," Rowan explained slowly. "Humans who once shared their life force with vampires during times of peace. They weren't immortal, nor powerful like the bloodlines, but they could heal, sense danger, and see what others could not. Their existence has been obscured by centuries of conflict." Lucian's voice turned low. "And the hallowed hunted them until they vanished." Ava felt her knees weaken. "So you're saying I'm one of them?" "We don't know yet," Rowan answered quickly. "But something in your essence is stirring, something they would want to extinguish." Ava pressed a hand to her chest, struggling to steady her breathing. Her entire life seemed to shift beneath her feet like sand. Elias leaned against her gently. "I don't want them to hurt you." Lucian watched the two of them with a storm behind his eyes. Protectiveness, fear, calculation. "They won't," he said firmly. "Not while you're under my protection." Ava met his gaze. "And if I stay close to you, won't that make me more of a target?" Lucian stepped forward, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Ava, you were already a target the moment you saved my son." His tone softened. "But I will not let anyone take what is mine to protect." Her breath caught. There was something in his voice she didn't know how to name, a quiet intensity that made her stomach twist in a way she didn't expect. Before she could respond, the massive front doors of the hall slammed open. A messenger, breathless and pale, sprinted inside. "Your Majesty, there's movement in the southern wing, shadows gathering. We think the hallowed are attempting to infiltrate the dungeons." Lucian's expression hardened instantly. "Seal every corridor, double the guards. No one enters or leaves without my command." The messenger bowed and ran back out. Lucian turned to Ava and Elias. You two stay together. Rowan, keep them close. I'll handle the intruders. Ava grabbed his arm before thinking. Wait, you can't go alone. Lucian paused, eyes flicking to her hand on his sleeve. For a heartbeat, the hall seemed to still around them. I've been fighting them for centuries, he said quietly. This is my burden. Ava didn't let go. Maybe so, but now it's mine too. Something flickered in his gaze. Not annoyance, but something dangerously close to respect. Or fear of losing what he had only just begun to protect. Before we continue, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in her place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you chills. Lucian placed his hand gently over hers, steady but firm. Stay safe, he murmured. Then he released her hand and vanished in a sweep of scarlet mist. Ava stood frozen, heart racing, unsure whether she feared the hollowed more or the truth about herself that was beginning to surface. Ava felt Lucian's absence immediately. The air lost its electric weight, as though the room itself exhaled after holding tension too long. Rowan urged her and Elias toward a side corridor, one hidden behind a column carved with ancient symbols. Elias held her hand so tightly she could feel his pulse racing through his fingertips. We must move, Rowan whispered. If the Hollowed are in the southern wing, they'll try to reach the heart of the castle next. The heart? Ava asked. The dungeons, Rowan said. They hold artifacts, spells, and records the Hollowed would kill to destroy. And some, they'd kill to free. A shiver ran down her spine as she followed him through the narrow passage. The walls were colder here, carved from stone untouched by sunlight for centuries. Elias stayed close, brushing against her side with every step. His presence both grounded and terrified her. He had nearly died once. She would not let it happen again. Faint noises echoed from somewhere deeper inside the castle. Shifting stone, distant thuds, the low hum of magic colliding with something darker. Ava tried to steady her breathing, but every sound made her flinch. Rowan, she whispered, is it true? What you said earlier? About the breath blessed? Rowan didn't answer at first. He walked ahead until they reached a wider chamber, a hidden junction with 3 branching corridors. Only then did he turn to her. It is not a certainty, he said carefully, but the signs are there, and if you are one of them, the Hollowed would want you captured more than killed. Captured? Ava repeated. For what? Rowan exhaled heavily. Because the breath blessed were the only ones capable of purifying what the Hollowed corrupted. You saw the one who attacked the king. Their darkness spreads through the world like a rot. A breath blessed can stop that rot, at a cost. Ava's pulse quickened. What cost? Rowan hesitated. Their life. Elias grabbed Ava's arm. No, he said softly, fiercely. She can't. Ava knelt, placing both hands on his shoulders. Elias, she whispered, I don't even know if any of that is true. We're safe right now. That's what matters. But even as she spoke the words, the walls around them trembled lightly, like something nearby had struck stone hard enough to send a shockwave through the castle. Rowan stiffened. We need to keep moving. He guided them down the left corridor, deeper into the hidden passages. Ava forced herself to focus. Left foot, right foot. Don't look behind you. Don't think of shadows peeling off walls or breath being stolen in the dark. Don't think of Lucian, fighting alone. She didn't realize she had spoken his name aloud until Rowan looked at her sharply. The king can handle himself. Ava nodded, but she wasn't convinced. Lucian had shown power beyond anything she'd imagined, but also a vulnerability he tried desperately to hide. The Hollowed knew where to hit him. They knew his deepest fear, losing his son. The passage finally opened into a quiet chamber lined with preserved scrolls and old relics, each sealed within glass cases. The air was warmer here, scented with dust and old magic. Elias touched one of the cases gently, tracing the outline of an ancient crest. Ava approached a pedestal at the center of the room. A faint glow pulsed atop it, soft and rhythmic like a heartbeat. Rowan noticed her staring. That is an ancestral seal. It reacts to life force. It's calling to me, Ava murmured. Rowan's brow furrowed. That shouldn't be possible. She reached out, her fingers shaking, but before she could touch the light, a sharp clang echoed far down the corridor. Then another, and another, louder, closer, like metal doors collapsing under violent force. Elias whimpered. Ava turned instantly, pulling him behind her. "Rowan!" He was already moving, extinguishing torches with a swift gesture until the room faded into dim amber twilight. "They found us." Ava's heart slammed against her ribs. Footsteps, slow, wet, dragging, slithered down the corridor toward them. The air thickened with cold. The torches nearest the hall flickered violently, as if suffocating. Rowan grabbed Ava's wrist. "Listen to me. If anything happens, take Elias and run. Follow the right passage. It leads to the sunrise courtyard. Guards will be there." "But what about you?" she whispered. Rowan's eyes glowed faintly gold. "I have lived long enough to know when death is a fair price." Elias clung to Ava, trembling. She held him close, anger rising through her fear. She wouldn't let death claim him. Not Rowan, not Lucian, not Elias, not anyone. The footsteps stopped just beyond the chamber entrance. Silence. A cold whisper spilled into the room like smoke. "Breath blessed." Ava's blood froze. "They found you." Before she could react, a figure stepped into the doorway. Not mist, not shadow, but something in between, its edges flickering like a dying flame. Rowan snarled under his breath. Ava tightened her hold on Elias. She realized with chilling clarity, the Hollowed hadn't come for the dungeons. They had come for her. The figure at the doorway drifted forward, its edges rippling like torn fabric in a storm. Ava felt the temperature drop with every inch it crossed. Elias pressed himself into her side, trembling so hard she could feel it through her clothing. Rowan stepped between them, his hands lifting, palms glowing with a thin layer of gold light. "Stay behind me," he ordered, voice low but steady. Ava obeyed, though every instinct screamed to run. She tightened her grip on Elias's shoulders. The boy's breath came fast and shallow, his wide eyes locked on the shifting figure. The Hollowed moved like a dying candle flame, unstable and wrong. It didn't walk. It drifted, each step silent and slow, as though savoring their fear. When it spoke, the voice echoed from within its hollow center, layered and distorted. "You should not exist," it hissed, its faceless head tilting toward Ava. "Your line was erased." Rowan extended both hands. The gold glow expanded, forming a thin barrier in front of them. "Leave this place," he commanded, "or be undone." The figure paused, then laughed. An awful, empty sound. "You cannot undo what is already nothing." It lifted an arm, fingers stretching unnaturally long, like smoke pulled thin by wind. "Give her to us, and the boy lives." Ava felt Elias stiffen in terror. She pushed him slightly behind her and stepped forward, surprising even herself. "No," she said. "You won't touch him." The Hollowed turned its shifting, faceless shape toward her, its form trembling with hunger. "You shine," it whispered. "We will devour the shine." Rowan slammed his palms outward. A blast of golden energy burst forward, striking the Hollowed squarely. The figure recoiled violently, its form flickering, shrinking, then stretching again as it fought the force back. "Run!" Rowan shouted. Before she could move, before she could even think, the creature surged forward, faster than a shadow, faster than breath. Rowan thrust himself directly into its path. The chamber filled with a shock wave of darkness and light, colliding so violently that Ava felt her ears ring, her vision blur. Rowan staggered, coughing. The Hollowed wrapped around him like smoke, claws sinking into his chest, not tearing skin, but plunging directly into his essence. Rowan gasped, light erupting from his body in trembling pulses. "Rowan!" Ava cried, reaching for him. "Go!" he roared, his voice breaking. "Ava, take the boy." The Hollowed consumed more of him, feeding on his breath, his life. His golden glow flickered like a dying ember. Ava grabbed Elias's hand and pulled him backward, but the doorway behind them darkened as two more Hollowed figures materialized, blocking the exit. Panic clawed at her throat. They were surrounded. Rowan fell to one knee, the main Hollowed towering over him, its essence threading into his chest like icy roots. Elias sobbed. Ava, they'll kill him. No, Ava whispered fiercely, though terror ate at her. Not if we fight. But what could she do? She had no weapons, no magic, no training. All she had was her breath. A sound began to hum in the chamber. Soft at first, then rising, resonant, vibrating through her ribs. Elias's hand tightened around hers. Ava, he whispered, you're glowing. She looked down. Light, faint but unmistakable, radiated from her chest, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The ancestral seal she had felt earlier. It was reacting again, calling to her, answering something deep within her. The hollowed hissed, withdrawing slightly. No, impossible. Rowan lifted his head, his fading eyes widening. Ava, breathe. She didn't understand. What do you mean? Breathe out, Rowan croaked. Your breath is not human. The hollowed lunged toward her, shrieking. Ava inhaled sharply, then exhaled, her breath releasing not air, but a wave of soft, luminous light. The force struck the hollowed with stunning power, blasting it backward. The creature's form tore at the edges, unraveling like smoke, whipped apart by a storm. The other two hollowed shrieked, pulling back from the light poured into the room. Rowan collapsed fully, but the grip of the hollowed on him snapped as the creature retreated. Ava gasped, falling to her knees, dizzy and trembling. Elias grabbed her shoulders, eyes wide with awe and fear. Ava, what was that? She didn't know. The light faded quickly, leaving her breathless and shaking, her pulse thundering. Rowan managed a weak smile. Breath blessed indeed, he whispered. You may be the last. Before Ava could speak, the remaining hollowed fled into the darkness of the corridor, their shrieks echoing like distant storms. Rowan coughed, struggling to sit up. Ava rushed to him. Are you hurt? He nodded faintly. I'll survive. You pushed them back. Ava stared at her trembling hands. How did I do that? Rowan's eyes softened. Your lineage has awakened. Fully. Elias clung to her. You saved us. Ava swallowed hard. Before we continue, tell me if you would have the courage to live a story like this, or if something similar has ever happened to you. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you chills. Ava took one last look at the corridor where the hollowed had vanished, because she knew they would return. And now, they would come for her with everything they had. Ava didn't realize she was still shaking until Rowan leaned against the wall to steady himself, and she instinctively reached to help him. Her hands trembled violently, but she forced them still. Elias hovered beside her, eyes wide and shining with a mix of fear and wonder. The three of them stood in the quiet chamber, surrounded by relics and faint dust, the echo of the hollowed's retreat still lingering in the air like a fading scream. Rowan exhaled slowly, placing a hand over his chest. We cannot stay here. They'll regroup. Ava nodded, though her legs felt like water. Can you walk? Yes, Rowan said, though his voice cracked. Your light disrupted their grip on me, but it drained you as well. We need to move before they return. Elias wrapped his small hand around Ava's, grounding her. His touch always felt different, gentler than she expected, as if he could sense emotions deeper than words. She squeezed his hand, steadying herself, then turned toward the dark corridor. Rowan led the way, limping slightly. Ava kept close behind, carrying Elias when he grew tired of running. The corridor stretched on endlessly, winding through narrow passages and staircases older than any map. Rowan, Ava whispered finally, her voice tight. What happened back there? What did I do? You used your breath, Rowan said without turning. His golden eyes reflected the faint torches. The breath blessed could release their essence in moments of danger. It cleanses corruption, repels darkness, and disrupts hollowed forms. But it takes much from you. Too much if used carelessly. Ava swallowed hard. It felt like I was tearing something out of myself. You were, Rowan murmured. Your life force. Elias clutched her tighter. Don't do it again. Not unless you have to. Ava braided her fingers through his. I won't. I promise. They continued forward until the narrow corridor opened into the sunrise courtyard, an enclosed open-air space walled by ancient stone and lit by soft morning light filtering through the clouds. Guards stood at the perimeter, tense and alert. When the guards saw Rowan and Elias, they straightened. But when their eyes landed on Ava, glowing faintly, their expressions shifted, fear mixed with something like awe. One guard stepped forward. "We were told to bring you directly to the king." "We'll go at once," Rowan said. His voice was still strained, but urgency propelled him. Ava moved closer to Elias. The courtyard seemed too exposed, too open. Every shadow felt like a hiding place for the hollowed. Rowan noticed. "They won't attack here. Sunlight weakens them." Ava didn't feel reassured. "I want to see Lucian. Now." The guards exchanged glances before leading them toward the eastern tower, the highest point of the castle, where Lucian often retreated for strategic planning. As they climbed the spiral stairs, Ava's chest tightened. What would he think when he learned what she had done? Would he fear her? Use her? Protect her? The moment they reached the top, the double doors flew open before the guards could knock. Lucian stood there. His cloak was torn, streaked with ash. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes burned with crimson fury. But the moment he saw Elias, alive, relief washed over his face so visibly, Ava felt her chest tighten. He crossed the room in 3 long steps, kneeling to gather his son into his arms. Elias buried his face in his father's shoulder. "You're safe," Lucian whispered, voice breaking. "I'm here. I'm here." Ava stood frozen. This side of him, raw, unguarded, she had only glimpsed before. It made him look less like a king and more like a father. Then Lucian lifted his gaze to Ava. His expression changed again, shocked, confused, almost struck, as his eyes traced the faint glow still pulsing beneath her skin. "Ava," he breathed. "Your aura." Rowan stepped forward. She repelled the hollowed. Alone. Lucien rose slowly, disbelief written across his features. "You used the breath of the ancients." Ava swallowed. "I didn't know what I was doing." "You shouldn't have been able to do it," Lucian said softly. "Not without dying." Her heart lurched. "I didn't die." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You survived something no human in centuries has survived." His hand lifted instinctively, stopping just short of touching her cheek. He hesitated, then lowered it, restraint flickering through his eyes. "You're changing," Lucien whispered. "I can feel it." Ava's breath trembled. "Is that a good thing or a terrible one?" Lucien's gaze softened, the storm in him shifting. "It's dangerous. For you. For us. For the kingdom." A beat of silence stretched between them. "But," he added quietly, "it may also be the only thing that can save my son." Ava felt the weight of those words settle deep inside her, terrifying and binding. And for the first time she realized her presence wasn't an accident. It was fate, dangerous, ancient, and alive inside her. Ava felt Lucian's words settle over her like a mantle she wasn't ready to carry. The tower chamber was vast and open, the wind pushing through the tall archways with soft, restless sighs. Rowan guided Elias to sit on a cushioned bench near the balcony, but Lucian remained where he was, close enough that Ava could feel the gravity of his presence. She steadied her breathing. "If my breath can repel them, then what do the hollowed want with me?" Lucian's jaw tightened. "To silence you. Or to use you." He turned away slightly, staring at the horizon as if seeking answers in the pale sky. The breath blessed were not simply healers. They were shields, anchors. When darkness spread through the kingdom centuries ago, they were the ones who held the corruption at bay. Rowan joined him. But using their power shortened their lifespan drastically. No king wished to depend on them, or lose them. Lucian's gaze flicked briefly toward Ava. And so their line was hidden, protected. Or so we believed. Ava stepped closer. "But if I'm really one of them, why now? Why awaken now?" Rowan shook his head. "Dormant lineage awakens only under 2 circumstances: proximity to great darkness." He glanced at the place where the hollowed had attacked. "Or a bond formed with a powerful being." Lucian finished quietly. Ava's breath hitched. "A bond?" Neither man elaborated. Instead, Lucian turned, expression unreadable. "What matters now is that you are targeted. And they will not stop." Ava hesitated. "Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to use this power without dying." Lucian stepped toward her, the space between them shrinking until she felt his breath stir the air between them. You must learn to control it. The breath you released earlier, it was instinct, raw, unfocused. If you try that again without guidance, it could consume you. Then teach me, she said, surprising herself. If this is happening to me, then I want to use it to protect Elias. Lucian's expression flickered with something she couldn't name, pride layered with fear. Rowan cleared his throat. There is a ritual chamber beneath the eastern wing. It was built for the breath-blessed, though unused for centuries. If her power is awakening, that chamber may respond. Lucian nodded sharply. We go there. But before they could move, Elias suddenly lifted his head. His voice was soft, but urgent. Wait. Ava rushed to him. What is it? Elias's small hand reached for hers, gripping firmly. Ava, when you used the light, I felt something. Lucian tensed. What did you feel? Elias looked between them, eyes shimmering with a mixture of fear and innocence. It wasn't just light. It warmed me, like it chased the darkness inside me away. Ava froze. Inside you? Elias nodded slowly. When the hallowed touched me, I felt something cold stay in my chest. But when Ava breathed out that light, it went away. Lucian's eyes sharpened instantly, turning to Rowan. The residue, you said it would take days to clear. Rowan blinked. It should have. Unless her breath purified it instantly, Lucian finished. Ava swallowed hard. So, my power isn't just defensive. Lucian shook his head. It's far more. If you can cleanse his aura, then you may be the only thing keeping the hallowed from taking him altogether. A memory slammed into her. Elias gasping, struggling, his chest rising and falling like it weighed nothing and everything at once. She felt sick. Then we need to train now. Lucian motioned toward the door, urgency tightening his features. We go to the chamber. Rowan, prepare protective wards. Rowan bowed. At once. They began descending the tower stairs, Elias holding Ava's hand tightly, his fear palpable. Halfway down, he whispered, Ava, you won't leave, right? She squeezed his hand. Never. Not while you need me. When they reached the lower halls, Lucian slowed, walking beside Ava. His voice was soft, pitched low so Elias wouldn't hear. You're not alone in this, he said. Whatever awakens in you, I will make sure you survive it. Ava looked at him, heart pounding. Why do you care this much? Lucian stopped walking. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Really looked. The red in his eyes dimming to something almost human. Because you saved my son, he said quietly. And because I cannot lose another person fate has placed in my path. Ava felt her breath catch. But before either of them could say more, a deafening crash echoed from the eastern corridor ahead. Lucian moved instantly, shielding Elias and Ava behind him. Dust spilled from the ceiling. Torches flickered violently. And then, emerging from the settling debris, a shape began to rise. Not a hollowed. Something bigger. Something older. Rowan's voice carried from behind them, full of dread. They've breached the ancient gate, he whispered. Ava, they are not coming for the kingdom anymore. Lucian's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. They are coming for you. The shape emerging from the dust was massive, far larger than any hollowed Ava had seen. Its form writhed like a storm trapped inside a body, limbs shifting between solid and mist, joints bending in angles that defied nature. The air grew so cold, Ava's breath crystallized before her eyes. Elias whimpered and clung to her, trembling so violently she felt it in her bones. Lucian moved first, stepping in front of them with a speed that shook the stones under his boots. Stay behind me, he ordered, voice low and sharp. Rowan's face had drained of color. That's no ordinary hollowed, he whispered. It's an ancient, a remnant of the original breathtakers. They haven't appeared in centuries. The creature's head twisted unnaturally until its faceless surface faced Ava. The cold in the chamber deepened, and a whisper spread through the air like a hiss carried by wind. Breath blessed. Come. Ava's pulse hammered, her knees weakened. It wasn't speaking to Rowan. It wasn't speaking to Lucian. It was speaking to her. Lucian's cloak snapped behind him as he summoned a wall of red energy. "You will not touch her," he snarled, fangs lengthening. The ancient slammed into the barrier with a force that made the entire hallway shudder. Cracks splintered through Lucian's shield, the creature pushing forward with its full weight. Ava felt the vibration through the floor. Elias cried out, burying his face in her side. Rowan raised both hands, golden light swirling, but the ancient's presence seemed to swallow the glow entirely. His breath caught. "My magic! It's draining!" Lucian gritted his teeth. "Ava, take Elias. Run!" She didn't move. Every instinct demanded she obey, grab Elias, flee down the corridor, escape the freezing shadow bearing down on them. But something deeper, hotter, ancient stirred in her chest. "No," she said, voice shaking but firm. "I'm not running." Lucian turned sharply. "Ava, I can help." The creature struck the shield again. The barrier shattered, crimson shards dissolving into the cold air. Lucian staggered backward, catching himself before falling. The ancient surged forward. Ava stepped in front of Lucienne before she could think, heart pounding like a drum inside her ribs. "Stay back!" she shouted, though her voice broke. The creature froze. Rowan's eyes widened. "It's reacting to her breath." Ava placed one hand over her chest. She could feel it, the pull, the warmth rising like a tide, trembling under her skin. Lucienne reached for her arm. "Ava, don't. You don't know the cost." She met his eyes. "If I don't, it will take Elias. It will take all of us." He froze. And in that heartbeat, she exhaled. Light burst from her. Not soft this time, not gentle. It exploded outward in a wave that illuminated the corridor, filling every crack, every shadow, every trembling inch of space. The creature shrieked, a tortured, hollow scream that rattled the stained glass windows far across the castle. Its body split at the center, as if the light was tearing it open from the inside. The mist of its form writhed, collapsed, then dissolved into nothing but dust. Ava collapsed to her knees. Her vision blurred. Her lungs burned with a cold fire, as though pieces of her very soul had gone with the breath she'd released. The world tilted sharply, and she felt herself falling, until arms caught her. Lucian. He pulled her against him, lowering them both carefully to the floor. "Ava, Ava, stay with me." Her breaths were shallow, fractured. She felt lightheaded, numb. Is he safe?" she whispered. Lucian glanced behind her. Elias stood trembling but unharmed, Rowan steadying him. "Yes," Lucian said, voice breaking. "You saved him. Again." A small smile tugged at Ava's lips. "Good." Her eyelids fluttered. Lucian cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. "Ava, look at me. Don't fade. Not now." She blinked slowly. "I'm okay, I think. Just tired." Rowan kneeled beside them. "She gave more of her essence than her body can manage. But she's alive. She needs rest." Lucian closed his eyes briefly in relief. Rowan looked from Ava to Lucian, understanding dawning. Her connection to the prince, to you, it anchors her. That bond is why she survived. Lucian stiffened, not denying it. Ava, barely conscious, whispered, "Lucian, don't let go." His hold tightened instantly. "Never." Rowan guided Elias closer. The boy leaned in, resting his small hand on Ava's. "You're part of us now," he whispered. A warmth pulsed through Ava's chest. Faint, but steady. She wasn't alone. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't just a maid. She was breath-blessed, and she had chosen them. Lucian lifted her gently. "Let's take her somewhere safe," he said, voice soft but resolute. "The kingdom owes you everything." Ava closed her eyes, resting against him. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged to something, and that something was ready to fight beside her. What did you think of the story? Subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who will also be moved today.